Welcome to Love Life for Singles. I'm your host, Jane Donovan, and this is the show that helps you to have a connective, successful, and most important of all, fun social life. Hi, welcome again. Wow, another week has passed. This week I want to be talking about exes and dating stories. All right, so this is another big self-sabotaging behavior that many people experience, whether they are sharing and doing this or whether they're on the receiving end, and that's a turn off for them about the other person. This one is talking about exes and your dating experiences. This is an absolute major no-no. So there's a few different reasons why this is a no-no, is that when you start talking about exes, the first thing that you've done is you've actually brought that person in on the date. So if you were having a date with a girl or a guy, there's the two of you, and you start talking about your ex, you've now brought a third person in on this date. And that's not a cool, energetic game to play. You want to be just the two of you. The next thing is that when you start talking about your ex, and I realise that many people are going to ask about past relationships. It's kind of a common topic amongst discussion when you're on a date. What I would encourage you to do, you can't kind of avoid the answer because then it looks like you're shifty or you've got something to hide. So you need to be open and consciously aware of what it is that you're saying. But I want you to prepare a really cool, positive answer. When you speak ill of somebody from your past relationship, it doesn't speak well for you. It clearly says to the other person that you haven't moved on and that you're actually not ready for another relationship. So many people will be ruling you out based just on that. And again, how do I know this? From the thousands of emails that I get from people saying, no, don't want to swap phone numbers, or went on a date with this person, it was a disaster, they're not over their ex yet, they're not ready to be dating yet. So while you're doing your internal work on healing from your past, your outer game, the answer is something along the lines of, we were together for many years and during a lot of that time we're very happy. Unfortunately, the last few years or few months or however long, the last period wasn't great. However, I am pleased that we had the relationship we did, and I'm looking forward to moving on and experiencing new things in life. Now, for 99% of people, that probably is going to be a standard answer that any of you could give. Because the truth is that if you were in a long-term relationship, there would have been times, there would have been much of that relationship where you were happy before it turned sour. And so that is your truth. Many of you would have had children to that person. There would be many beautiful memories, not just of having the children, but of them getting older, of, building homes and moving in together or getting married or getting engaged or any of those things. They're big milestones that you do celebrate in your past. So you don't need to dismiss it. There were happy times. It's great. The truth is also that for most people, when a relationship ends, that it actually hasn't been nice for a long time. And you can say that. You can say towards the end it wasn't great. But you can also say, but I'm now looking forward to new experiences. So you've been honest, you've been truthful, you've been positive. You do not need to get into the court battle that you're having. You do not need to talk about custody battles. You do not need to be talking about the inequality of the divorce settlement or money. You do not need to talk about how they were emotionally abusive or physically abusive or whatever was occurring in your story. People do not need to know that information. Now, they may like to know that information further down the track. You do become a relationship. You do enter into a relationship and become a couple. Sure, that is the stuff that you share. You likely will have similar stories that it will be good to be able to support each other through those stories. But in the early stages of dating, that is not the time for it. It says a lot about you. So be careful about what you're saying and how you're saying it. The other thing I want to touch on here too is most people know that it's not a good thing to talk about your exes. But what about the talking about the horror dating stories? Now, a lot of people don't think about this. They just automatically talk about them. If they're a member at a place like My Club Social 8, then they might talk about other dinners that they've been to or other events or who they've met and their dates that they've gone on. And again, many of them find it amusing to share horror stories. when you're doing your dating thing, and a lot will do this with online, not just through a sub like Social 8. If you're meeting online, one of the most common things when people go for a coffee date is to talk about their online experiences. And so somebody thinks they're being really funny and they're telling the story about the guy that turned up that had the 10-year-old photo or wasn't even his photo, or the girl that turned up and said that she was, curvy, but she turns up and she's 50 kilos overweight. People think these stories are funny. But the reality is you're speaking really harshly of somebody else. And the person that's sitting down opposite you on that date is actually thinking, right, am I going to be the next story? What's she going to find fault with? Or what's he going to find fault with me? So when she goes on another coffee date next week or another Social 8 dinner next week, am I going to be the one that she's being mean about? You really want to watch your dating stories. They, again, can be amusing, but you want to be kind. So if you're going to tell a cruel story, make sure you do it in a sandwich method of at least tell a positive story, then a negative, then a positive, so that you're not just being seen as somebody that's very judgmental, very cruel, with no compassion, no empathy, and a desire to feel better about him or herself by belittling others. Now, we'll talk more about that kind of behaviour in another podcast, because being rude about other people, being judgmental, being mean about other people says a lot about you. So it's really something that you want to work on. But I will get into that heavier in another podcast. But for now, I want you to just consciously be aware to try and keep your dating stories positive. Try to keep your past relationship stories positive. Now, recognise that some of you might find this as a real challenge, particularly if you've had a very traumatic past relationship. However, the sooner that you can get a short statement that answers the question when people ask you about your relationship horror story, that you can have a more positive but realistic story to share, a very short statement. Not only are you going to be perceived in a better light, but you're actually going to feel better about yourself. Telling the same negative story keeps you in that negative pattern. Telling a new story brings you into a much more positive place. You can hang on to your victim story, or you can get a new story. And your new story, if it's a more positive one, is going to be uplifting for you and also those around you. So I hope that's helped. As always, I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for the emails that you've been sending through. And I look forward to sharing another recording with you next week. So this week, really try and focus on finding a way to share your dating stories and your ex-relationship stories in a more positive light that speaks well about you as a human being, as somebody that is kind, generous, compassionate, sensitive, beautiful, responsible, and positive. Have a gorgeous week.
If you're ready to step outside your comfort zone and really engage in having a connective, successful and fun social life, then head to my website, janedonovan.com.au, where I have links to all sorts of opportunities and resources just for singles. And most important of all, I really want you to remember, you are worthy.